All right. A pleasant good evening to everyone, and welcome to the Barbados Association of Professional Engineers student chat. This evening, we are very fortunate. We're going to have three young engineers who are practicing currently in Barbados to have a brief discussion, and then we'll entertain some questions and answers from the students who are here. Just to give you some information, the purpose of the discussion this evening is, number one, to learn a bit about the various engineering disciplines these individuals have chosen and their experiences at university and also within the discipline. And then to give you some idea of what life is like at university. And then certainly to entertain your questions as it pertains to applying to the university. Once you get there, the type of experiences you can probably have. If you may have questions pertaining to the type of subjects that you need to do for certain engineering disciplines. So we're quite happy to entertain those questions. If there are any parents here as well, we're quite happy to entertain questions from you parents also, as well as guidance counselors, any teachers, etc. So we're happy that so far we seem to be filling up quite nicely. We think we have about 60 odd students registered this afternoon. So we are looking forward to a good afternoon session. So I will introduce the two speakers who are currently here. And we are expecting to have one additional speaker to join us during the presentation. I will ask, just as a bit of housekeeping, we will ask you please to keep your mics and videos muted until we reach the question and answer session, and at which point you can unmute and bring up your video if you so choose to do, or if you're feeling a little shy, you can put your question in the chat and we'll do our best to answer that question for you. As my grandmother used to say, nobody here bites. So please use this opportunity this evening to ask questions and to feel free to do so. It gives, I think, the type of opportunity that some of us probably when we were younger wish we had, where we could quiz and ask professionals questions to help us to make the type of career choices that most of you will be looking to make in the near future. So please don't be shy. And we ask you to interact and certainly to engage. So just before we get going, as it were, I just want to acknowledge the presence of our president, Mr. Trevor Brown. He's the president of, Lieutenant Colonel Brown is the president of the Barbados Association of Professional Engineers. My name is Vincent Jones, and I am the second vice president of the Association of Professional Engineers. We also have some other members of the executive who are acting in a technical capacity. So I just want to welcome our members, and certainly I want to formally welcome all of the students today. So I'd like to introduce you to our two speakers who are on with us at this point in time. So I'll start with Mr. Dave Skeet. Dave was the recipient of a Barbados government exhibition in 1994. He holds a Bachelor of Science honors degree in Electrical and Computer Engineering at the West Indies St. Augustine campus. He's registered to practice engineering in Barbados and Trinidad. He's a member of the Barbados Association of Professional Engineers. Between 1998 and 2004, he was an electrical engineer at the Arawak Cement Company Limited, where he was responsible for electrical maintenance and project implementation. Between 2004 and 2020, he was a generation engineer at the Barbados Light and Power Company Limited, with the responsibilities for electrical maintenance, work on various projects within the generation and asset management sections of the company. Between 2020 and the present, he's been promoted now to the engineering manager, planning and projects at the Barbados Light and Power Company Limited. And he's currently project manager of the Barbados Light and Power Company Limited Clean Energy Bridge Project, which is an exciting a new aspect of our electrical generation in Barbados, and they're building out a new plant at Trents in St. Lucie. So when it comes to the question and answer, certainly you can ask Dave on his progression to where he is right now as the engineering manager, or if you even want to ask a question or two about the project that he's currently project manager on, please feel free to do that. Our next speaker this evening is Mr. Enrique Oxley, and he is a registered professional civil and structural engineer in the Stantec Barbados office. He holds a Master of Civil Engineering honours degree from Loughborough University in the UK. He's undertaken numerous work attachments in Barbados and internationally in London, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and Australia while pursuing the Diploma in Industrial Studies. His civil and structural engineering experience includes design projects with technical, civil, and structural oversight for the Double O Brighton warehouse development, installation of water mains for the Barbados Water Authority, infrastructural works for the geothermal power plant at La Soufrière volcano in St. Vincent, and civil design and modeling for the Central Roseau area infrastructure upgrade in projects in Dominica. On the environmental engineering side, Mr. Oxley has led teams of technicians in the collection of field data and laboratory samples for a variety of monitoring projects, including the annual Royal Westmoreland Water Quality Monitoring Program, the 2015 to 2020 Barbados Light and Power Spring Garden Power Plant Water Quality Monitoring Program, and the Walker's Sand Quarry Dust and Noise Monitoring Program. So both gentlemen are certainly versed in wide areas of engineering in their respective disciplines. Both of them have had experience, which I'm sure they'll be more than happy to share with you this afternoon. So guys, if you just want to say a quick hello, Enrique.
Hey, good evening, Vincent. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Good. Dave?
Hi, good evening all. Hope we can make the most of this evening.
Yeah. Don't let Dave's that white stuff on Dave's chin fool you. He's still a young guy, but you'll find that when you work in management, you tend to be under some stress. So it tends to put that white stuff on your face. You see, I don't keep a beard or a mustache for that same reason, right?
I should have said this off before this meeting.
Yeah, but we are all young at heart, so we don't want you students to think that you're just talking to a bunch of old men this evening. Please just interact with us. We're quite happy to ask any question or answer any questions that we certainly can. So before we start to get too serious and sensitive, we are students, I'm going to give you guys a corny joke because there's nothing like a corny joke to really break the ice, right? So we have a joke here about a mathematician and a physicist and an engineer. A mathematician, physicist, and engineer are all trying to find the volume of a yellow bouncy ball. The mathematician gets his calipers out and measures the diameter, then evaluates the integral. The physicist fetches a bowl of water, drops the ball in, and measures the displacement. The engineer strolls up with a book in hand, checks for a serial number, and looks up the volume in his yellow bouncy ball table. So that is just a little bit of engineering humor. And I know it's kind of corny, but anyhow, when you guys get into the field, you'll get these kind of corny jokes, so that's fine. So guys, what are we going to do? We're going to start by, I'm going to ask you guys some general questions. I just want you to be open and as free to share as you so wish to do. And then once we're finished our question segment, we'll then go into the question and answer where the students themselves or the teachers or the guidance counselors who are here will get to engage you and to ask you some questions as well. Okay, so the way I will direct my question in is that Dave, I'll ask you to answer first, followed by Enrique, if that's okay, guys. Yeah?
Sounds good.
Cool. All right, so the first question up, gentlemen. What was your inspiration for choosing the engineering discipline that you have chosen? What was your inspiration for choosing the engineering discipline that you have chosen? Dave?
Right, thank you. So at a very young age, I like to get into things to see how they would work. So if I had a toy, I would not after a long time try to disassemble it to see how it worked. And I realized I had a natural aptitude for that and came across one or two books and magazines in the library. And I remember once coming across a book which had instructions on how to build a radio receiver. And mind you, when I was a young boy, I was surrounded by lots of electronics because my father was into that. And so I felt that building something was always more exciting than even buying it. And so after I built that first radio when I was 12, I realized that there was no turning back. Of course, you were at that time bombarded by a lot of TV programs and so on that would show you what the future would look like. And the projection of the future always looked like if there was engineering played a big role in it. And so I felt it was a pretty good future. I will say that at no time I really thought about how much money I would make or anything of that nature. I thought that that would come naturally once you're good at what you're doing, but for sure it was a love of it. And I think that this is very important in any field that one goes into. I think a passion or a love for it is very important because if you don't love what you're doing, it's going to be very difficult to be good at it. You know, so that is a summary of my intro to engineering. And of course, school subjects I chose to suit that love of it, and I really have no regrets.
Okay, Dave, thanks very much for that. Enrique, did you also mash up toys when you were young, trying to figure out how they work?
Yeah, I had a lot of toys. I mashed up toys, but I wouldn't say that was where my love for engineering started. I just had a lot of energy. Mine was more of a slow burn, you know. Probably the time period was when I remember the Olympic Games, watching Olympic Games, seeing the stadiums, those complex stadiums, bird's nest, that sort of stuff. That really drew me to it. And there wasn't that certain at first about engineering, so I remember just doing some work experience and internships. Some were unpaid just to get a feel of it. And eventually I started to really enjoy it. I was always strong at technical subjects and it blossomed from there.
Okay, fantastic. All right, guys. Next question up. Which universities did you gentlemen attend? Dave?
Yes, I attended the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine.
Okay, fantastic. And Enrique?
Yeah, so I went to England, Loughborough University. Not many people might know where Loughborough is, but it's probably half an hour from Nottingham. We all know about Robin Hood movie. Yeah, so that was where it was much colder.
Yeah, Loughborough has a long history of engineering and built environment subjects. For those in the chat who might not be aware. And of course, the campus in the West Indies that is primarily responsible for engineering studies is the St. Augustine campus in Trinidad. So thanks, guys, for highlighting that for us. Question number 3. Can you, from your individual perspectives, give us some idea of what the application process to your universities was like? What did that entail? How much ahead of time did you have to apply in your time? Because obviously things might have changed since then. And just give us an idea of what your matriculation subjects you needed to have, etc. So just give us a rundown of the application process that you guys remember having gone through.
Yeah, so my application would have been some 27 years ago. So I want to just adapt it. I did have a conversation with a young engineer who recently graduated so that my information presented would be relevant. Well, at the time I did A-levels, in sixth form, which would have been, I know the two subjects that were required for entry into engineering were math and physics at A level. And I understand that at A level, at CAPE, math and physics are still a requirement. But of course, I urge you to research because these things are very dynamic and from year to year, the requirements may change. I understand that for a person entering from Barbados Community College, a 3.6 GPA was a requirement a few years ago. So I got this information from someone who entered university in 2010, which is still a few years ago. But the person sent me a link, and I know that the University of the West Indies has a website which informs of all of the entry requirements. And for whatever university, I'm pretty sure that that information is available. I know that the application was fairly early on in the academic year, like let's say late January for September entry for most universities.
All right, thanks very much for that, Dave. And Enrique, you want to let us know what the experience of going to the United Kingdom, how that differs from Dave's experience of having applied to UWA?
Yes, so I actually applied to, yes, the UK. I also applied to UWA Trinidad, and I applied in Canada, quite a wide variety of places. I went through the UCAS system, Universities College Admission Services, and there you can apply to multiple different universities through that one system, which is sort of useful. You don't need to go on.
Enrique, in my time when I did it, I think it was 7. How much was it in your time when you would have applied?
I think 7 was the maximum. I applied to 5 through UCAS.
Right.
And then
2 directly.
Yeah. And then I applied to other universities as well.
So let me just, I can interrupt you for 1 second, just to explain to the students who are here. The system in the UK is that you go through something, what they call a clearinghouse. As the UCAS is basically the clearing system. So you have one point where you send your information, and there you indicate to them which universities you're interested in, and they distribute your information to those 7 universities. And what Enrique also would have mentioned just now is that apart from the 7 that he would have had to choose from through the UCAS system, he would have also applied directly then to other universities. So I just want to give the younger students who might not have started to explore the application process some idea of what it is, because I know sometimes we may say certain things and think that they understand, but they don't. So keep going, sure. Enrique. Sorry.
No, that definitely helps, Vincent. Thanks for that. Yeah, so I applied through UCAS to 5 universities, and you deal with a particular person there who would assist you and make sure that you're going through your process well. And I also applied, as I said, to separate of universities. I went to BCC, that's where I did my associate degree. So I would have started thinking about my application process about 2 years before university, and then probably a year before is where I started to really hammer down, look at the criteria and start to do a lot of paperwork. One thing I would definitely highlight is if you're thinking of going overseas, you will probably have to get your work here evaluated. And I went through World Evaluation Services, WES, and they start to evaluate your courses and see how that compares to overseas. And we usually do quite well. Our education system here is very well. So we can take off like a year or 2 years sometimes off of our university degrees if you get a good evaluation. So that's something else to note there.
Thanks, Enrique. And just to let persons know, the last set of comments Enrique made, we are speaking about matriculation, the matriculation process. So there are some universities that will directly accept your qualifications. So I know that we are now into the age of CAPE, and in our early years, it was probably A level. I think they're now referred to it as CAPE. And so depending on where you're applying, whether it is University of the West Indies, whether it is the University of Technology in Jamaica, whether it is United States, Canada, United Kingdom, your qualifications will need to be reviewed and assessed to see that they match or meet the criteria for entry into the various universities. For some universities, it is a direct entry because they are familiar with the qualifications. If they've had students coming from the West Indies, they certainly will be familiar with CAPE and the CXC examining board. So in some instances, it would be a direct entry. You wouldn't have to do any or have your information assessed separately. For others, they may require you to submit further information, transcript, whatever the case is, that they can do further assessment. Certainly for the University of the West Indies, obviously the CAPE subjects are accepted. So just if you're there taking notes, and I hope that the students are, just please be aware of that, okay? Next question up, gentlemen. Can you tell us about can you tell us a bit about how was it for you as a young person leaving Barbados, because both of you would have left Barbados to study. And can you tell us how was it to adjust to the culture of the country that you went to study and live in for probably 3 to 4 years? And give us some idea of how is it to adjust to that, to those foreign cultures. So Dave?
Okay, so I think that living on campus in Trinidad is fairly easy because the culture is a Caribbean culture, and I was living on Hall, and there were persons from many islands. There were Barbadians, many Jamaicans, and others. And so adjusting culturally was fairly easy. Aside from that, of course, living on one's own for the first time and ensuring that you're organized in terms of having your meals ready while you study, because that is very important. And I urge you to have meal plans, because if you want to have the type of energy and focus that you need in university, that is one area you have to have sorted out, you know?
Dave, can I ask a question since you're talking
Sure.
about meals?
Yeah, sure.
How important is it that you would recommend that the average student learns to cook if they currently cannot cook or prepare meals for themselves? How important is that when you're living on your own?
Yeah, it is a skill that is very important, not just for university, but for life in general, you know? You are what you eat, and if you want that energy to have the type of mental focus, mental energy, and motivation, it's important that you prioritize that and learn healthy eating very early on in life, you know? So on Hall, what happens is that many students sometimes get together and form an arrangement called a boat. With a boat, what happens is that about sometimes, let's say 5 to 7 persons would take turns cooking for the group. And so you would cook once a week if you have the numbers to accommodate that. And so it works out fairly well. And of course, when you cook in once a week, you have to cook for 7 persons, but generally it is a system that allows you to not have to spend time cooking every day, right? So that I found that arrangement to be fairly efficient. But aside from meals, there is a social aspect to university, and I am sure that the persons who would have gone into university within the last year may have missed out on a lot of that, but it is something called networking. Networking is the ability to connect with people, and that is very important and is a skill that you should learn in university, because as you enter into the world of work, it is something that allows you to collaborate effectively with persons and to gain results and to and to get things moving. More than likely, if you have people reporting to you, or if you are working in a team, those skills you learn by collaboration are very helpful. And I think university is a place where you could hone those skills.
Okay, Dave. So you had a unique opportunity that you left Barbados, primarily a country, I think it is primarily Black, with a sprinkling of white people and some Indian people and some Chinese. And you went to a country that is probably 50-50, where you have an Indo culture and a Black culture. What was that? Because obviously the cultural nuances are going to be different. Did you have any challenges? I mean, this is a very honest forum, and we want to let our students be aware of what they can come across. So did you have any challenges culturally? Was there anything that you found to be strange that you had to adjust to? Was there any challenges with food? So these type of things would be useful for students as well.
Well, at the time, I really was not as conscious of it as I am now. I think that with social media and back in 1994, the internet was really now picking up. In fact, not many people had the internet back then, and I perhaps that has.
Dave, you've just given half of our students a heart attack. They can't imagine life without the internet.
So I will say that I was not as conscious of it back then, and I don't think that it was really ever brought to my attention. I never had any issues with it. But for sure, in Trinidad is a diverse set of people. And I think when you go into a classroom, there are people from all over, and therefore I think that almost anybody can blend in. So I had no issues with that whatsoever.
Did you have any challenges? Sorry, did you have any challenges with the accents of the people? Did you have to ask people to slow down when they were speaking to you? Did they understand your Bajanese? How was that?
I didn't have any issue there, although I find some persons were fascinated by the Bajan accent. I think that the Jamaicans on campus were getting the most attention, and when it came to that, I had a little bit of issue with it, but I think at the time I used to listen to dub music, so that helped me to understand a lot of the Jamaican lingo. But no issues whatsoever. Culturally, I think that in Trinidad you got exposure to a variety of meals, and living on Hall, because I found Hall itself was even more diverse than the country, because Hall was comprised of persons from all over. So I mean, I learned, like I said, I learned to cook Jamaican style, and because there were persons on the boat who would cook Jamaican, they taught me to cook Jamaican meals, and I really enjoyed that exposure to various cultures and so on. And on Hall, there were several activities, like for instance, there would be hall concerts and so on, where persons would showcase the culture of their individual islands, and each island had a association that they would have activities where persons could be exposed.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so Enrique, your experience obviously was a bit different. Now, this may come across strange to some people here, but I remember when I went off to Scotland to study, it felt really strange to me when I got there to see so much white people around, because I've grown up all my life in Barbados. Yeah. So right away you realize, well, there's a profound visual difference, if nothing else, that you encounter. So I want you again to be bluntly honest and let the students here know, what was it like going to the United Kingdom to study as a young Black male, and or did you meet any challenges and so on? So go for it.
So I went over there. I was there from 2009 to 2015. So I was 17 when I first went there. Yeah, 17, young Black boy on my own on a plane. It was a bit daunting. Got to the train station, off of my plane, and they couldn't understand. I need to get a ticket. They couldn't understand what I was saying. I was saying Derby, and she said, I can't understand. I had to write it down. And then they said, Derby, Derby. So yeah, there's going to be a language barrier there, but I think quickly you adapt, and you would get over that pretty soon. In terms of culture, I actually went there for swimming. So it's a white dominated sport. It was only two of us, two Black guys, but I didn't let that get to me. In my lecture hall, it was probably 200 plus students, and only about 2 or 3 of us Black kids. But I found it to be they're not as friendly up front as say in the Caribbean, but once you get to know them, you made a lot of friends. Because I was swimming, I was living with people from all over the world. So my roommates were from Egypt, Ireland, England, Luxembourg, and some other countries as well. So as Dave said, definitely had to learn how to cook. Mom's not there for you anymore. Auntie, grandma's not there on Sundays. It was a bit rough at first, but I found some Caribbean markets. They usually have markets on Fridays. London for sure, if you're in main England, you'll have Caribbean food you can find, get your plantain and that sort of thing, and made the most of it. So I think it's important to just not let that get to you. Just do your best, and you will make friends. You will make friends, and it will help you to grow as well. Being in these uncomfortable situations.
Fantastic. I think one of the important things I would want our student guests to realize is that when you go away to university, and even if you attend university locally, you do come into contact with various persons from different cultures and different countries. And you should utilize that opportunity. I think Dave said it, to network with these people, because you never know when you're finished studying, you may end up in a country that one of these persons are from. And it's always useful to have a friend, or at least know somebody when you go to a foreign country that you can call up, because that person can probably help you to get settled in. So by all means, utilize your university experience, not only to do your academics, but also to learn the skills of life. Whether the skills of life is learning to cook, whether the skills of life is learning to interact with people from different races and different cultures and different understandings from you. They will be curious and may ask you some questions that you may find strange, because like you, they're trying to find out. And, by all means, utilize the opportunity to find out about them and their cultures as well. Dave was a bit more fortunate because he went to a fellow Caribbean country, so he didn't have any problem with food that was not seasoned. Enrique, on the other hand, he would have gone to the UK, and having lived there, if you ever eat food from halls, I would recommend you travel with a bottle of pepper sauce and some salt, because the whole seasoning and approach to cooking is different to us. So these are little things you learn along the way. Dave might have found some food might be a little too spicy for him. Enrique might have tried to figure out what these people don't cook with no spices at all.
No spice.
So, it depends again where you go to study. You're going to be exposed to some different things. So go prepared with an open mind, but go prepared. So prepared being learn the basics of how to cook before you leave Barbados. Even if you're remained in here, these, as Dave has said, are life skills that you take forward with you into adulthood. So things that you take for granted now: learning to cook, learning to wash, learning to iron, learning how to use a clothes dryer. Because if you're in the UK, you can't go hang out your clothes on the line. So you have to learn how to use a dryer. And if you don't know how to use a dryer, then you can shrink some of your clothing as well. So all these are little things you need to learn. Little things that they don't ever tell you in the university manual, but you need to learn before you leave Barbados. If not, it could be a rough going down, as Enrique said, no nice Sunday macaroni pie and baked chicken unless you learn to do it yourself. So these are
one more thing, Vincent. You can take some with you. I remember my family had bags of flying fish and coconut bread. I ended up feeding half of my roommates, So you can always do that as well.
Enrique had to take flying fish with him. Dave probably had to export flying fish back to Barbados. So you see how these things go. Fantastic. All right, guys, let's go for another question. In terms of budgeting as a student, now obviously the university experience for you have been some years ago, Dave, a bit longer than Enrique. Can you express to our young colleagues here how important it is to budget and what areas you need to budget for when you are a student studying overseas? Dave?
Yes, so for sure you have to prioritize. If you are a big spender and a shopaholic, um, it really you have to have deep pockets. I certainly did not, and when I was in university, I stuck to the basics. I know there are persons who were in situations where, and at the time when I was in university, CDs and so on were very popular. Nowadays everybody's downloading music, but persons would go and buy those things. I mean, and I know of one guy who spent all of his money on CDs and so on, and then didn't have any money to get back home, you know. And what you have to do is think. You have a fixed budget to spend in a given year, and that's how it normally is for most persons who either are on student loan or scholarship or anything of that nature, and therefore you have to make that money last for a year. And there are some countries where people would give grants at the beginning of the year or in the middle of the year, and you would know when these grants would come because persons would splurge and go and buy, you know, top stereos and so on. So it's important that you live frugally, but you can still enjoy things, you know. Make sure you have enough money to eat properly and make it last. You know, that's basically it.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. And Enrique?
Yeah, budgeting is essential, especially, you know, you're over there, you're in a different place, you're pretty much on your own. It is important to sort of get an idea of how much you need to survive on a monthly basis, and you can plan that. And then you have your regular expenses. So the first thing is accommodation, bills, that needs to come up first, and then you can budget the rest of your money. And you need to be on top of that. Yeah, as Dave said, you know, engineering is quite intense. We're not like some other courses where, you know, you only have 3 days a week courses, Friday off. So I didn't really try to work a lot because it would take away from my studying. But if you can manage it, you can also, you know, get some jobs over there to help supplement and help out. It's always a good idea as well.
Okay, so some pointers here for you students. Both of our colleagues here, Dave and Enrique, have expressed the importance of budgeting. Budgeting may be something that is foreign to you. Maybe you have a weekly allowance at present, and you don't have to worry about paying bills because your parents attend to that. But I want you to start to educate yourself about certain things, about the cost of living, as it were, because it is something you learn very quickly when you get outside of Barbados. And as the guy said, when you're living on a fixed budget, and when I say a fixed budget, if you are on a student loan, if you have a Barbados scholarship at exhibition, it is a fixed amount of money that you will be given every year. Even if your parents have taken out a loan for you, it is going to be a loan for the period of study that you've been accepted for, and it will be a certain amount of money that will be entrusted to your account every year. So that means generally a good rule of thumb is that when the money run out, it pretty much finish, right? So you need to budget for things like tuition. That's the first big thing that you need to make sure you pay every year, your tuition. I guarantee you there's no external university that's going to let you stay unless you pay your tuition. They give you a grace period, but if you don't pay your grace period, they'll kindly ask you to leave. So your tuition is important. You have to budget for your books and any special educational materials you need. Nowadays, it might not be so much books. Maybe it may be a tablet and the different programs you may have to purchase. You'll have to budget for that. If you're going to live in a cold climate, you have to budget for clothing. because you can't go to a cold climate and wear short pants and t-shirt all year round. It's just not going to work. You'll have to budget for clothing that's going to be suitable for the time of year that you're over in that country. You'll have to budget for food. The cost of living in Barbados is going to be different to the cost of living in Trinidad. It's going to be different to the cost of living in the United Kingdom or another territory. So when I was studying in the UK, I used to have to constantly walk around and multiply everything by 3.6 because that was the exchange rate to bring me back to reality. So when I saw something was only, £3, it's only £3, and you multiply it out, you realize maybe it's not as cheap as it seems. In Trinidad, again, because the exchange rate may be, I can't remember, 6 TT, Dave, now, or has it changed?
6.6.
Right, so it's 6.6 TT to $1 Barbados dollar. Again, you have
$1 US dollar.
To $1 US dollar, sorry. So again, you have to get that exchange rate in your mind so that you're not overspending, because you may see something and think, oh man, this is cheap. But then when you actually convert it, you may realize, well, I really can't afford this. So another thing you'll have to budget for is your living accommodation, whether you're living on halls or if you're going to be living with friends off campus. These are all things you have to start to get an appreciation of how much they cost. And finally, in that calculation that you're doing, you have to budget your travel costs. Travel costs is getting from Barbados to the place that you're going to be studying. And also in terms of where you're living, if you have to take a bus every day to and fro the campus, or if the campus is across the city, because some campuses are not all on one compound. You may attend a university where there are certain parts of the campus in certain parts of the city. So you will have to take all of that into consideration when you're planning your overall budget for the year. And then there's this wonderful thing called inflation that you have to take on there as well, right? Because the value of a Barbados dollar this year might not be the value of a Barbados dollar next year. So I know it may sound like a lot. It may sound probably a bit deep, but these are the things you really have to start to think about and consider and have an honest discussion with your parents pertaining to the next step when you go on to study. All right, gents, coming around the bend here now. This is going to be the last 2 questions to you, and then we're going to open up for questioning. So in terms of a professional body, how important in your profession do you deem a professional body to be, and belonging to a professional body at the end of your university study?
Okay, so firstly, the engineering registration is the most important thing in terms of preparing yourself for recognition of your work. So the Engineering Registration Board is the body which looks after the applications for engineering registration. And that is very, very important. And I will repeat, very, very important, being able to register professionally as an engineer. Because I say this because there are many persons, very bright, and went into university to then come out and find out that the program they would have been involved in and they got their degree and so on, it is not allowing them, at least it's not accepted by the Engineering Registration Board for registering in the country they want to work in, right? And so I think it's important that this is researched. Aside from the engineering registration, there are several professional bodies which it is important to be part of because it allows you to get exposure to new material for your own growth and development within the field. So there are several engineering bodies. The Barbados Association of Professional Engineers is one such body, and there are other bodies internationally as well. And depending on the field that you go into, you can register and become one of these bodies. It is a lot of it is about exchange of information and bringing you up to date with the latest developments in the field, because obviously you don't want that you depend entirely on the information you would have gained through your field of study, because you expect to have a long career and things change very fast. So keeping up to date is very important. That is one avenue allows you to do that.
Okay, Dave, thanks a lot for that. Enrique, before you get going, I just want to welcome Moisha Steinbach. Moisha, can you bring up your video and unmute so we all can see you?
Hi, good night, everybody. And first of all, my apologies for being late. Unfortunately, I can't seem to get my camera to work, but are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you fine. So we'll just work with the audio. So let me just do a quick intro, everyone. Moisha is a mechanical engineer. He specializes in renewable energy systems. He pursued his master's degree at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland and graduated with first class honors in June of 2016. His interest in sustainability and drive to contribute to the reduction of the fossil fuel dependency of the Caribbean islands has led him to return home to Barbados to work in the energy industry. He joined the Emira Caribbean team in August of 2016 and has been actively involved in the ongoing renewable energy initiatives in the region. So Moisha, thanks for coming this afternoon. I appreciate that you are working, so you were running a bit late, but thanks for turning up anyway. Just to give you an idea, basically we've just been asking Dave and Enrique some questions about their university experience. And Enrique, I'm going to ask you for a little grace here because I think Moisha is probably a bit younger than all three of us and probably may have a more current point of view on some items that our students may want to explore a little further this afternoon. So Moisha, I'm going to throw you straight in on the deep end. And I see that you studied at University of Edinburgh, Scotland. I studied at Heriot-Watt, so just up the road from you. In a different year, of course, but just up the road from you all the same. Can you, Moisha, give us some idea? Tell us, in terms of when you went from Barbados up to Scotland to study, Enrique would have studied in England, you've studied in Scotland. Scotland is north of Great Britain, for those who might not be aware. What was the cultural differences that you found leaving Barbados and going to the United Kingdom? How different was it for you?
Yeah, sure. And I think the first thing I'll say, and I mean, obviously we've got quite a diverse panel here tonight in terms of age, where we may have studied. And I think one of the most important things to note before I start is I think it's important to understand that there are so many different avenues into engineering that it just entirely depends on so many scenarios in terms of where you're at, what you want to do, what the right path for you personally is, you know, where you are in extracurriculars, where you are financially, where you want to work, and what kind of specialties you want to do, because all these things, you know, contribute to what university and what country you may be looking at. So I may have done it a little differently. I actually left Barbados after CXCs in fourth form. And I was very lucky to have the opportunity to go to a boarding school in Canada for 2 years to essentially do what would have been the equivalent of sixth form. So I had already left home at quite a young age, at about 16, and gone to Canada. So I would have already have some level of exposure to leaving home and being in a different culture and meeting new people. So by the time I went to university up in Scotland, I think I was already completely open to that experience and kind of carried myself in a way that I knew how to meet new people and survive on my own. But I will say that I'm certainly very, very fond of my time, excuse me, in Scotland. Culturally, I actually think the Scottish people are quite similar to us in terms of pastimes. And I think they're very friendly, very happy people. I had an incredible time there. I loved the city of Edinburgh, as I'm sure you would know. It's a beautiful place. It's very culturally diverse. There's a lot of, you know, art scene going on. Anything you want to look for, you can find it there. You're not far from Glasgow as well, which is quite a happening city. So I think I think no matter where you go, you're going to find differences in culture and different people. And I think it's important just to have an open mind and you know, be open to new experiences, trying new things and putting yourself out there out of your comfort zone. And I'd say 99.9% of the time that really reaps rewards and pays off, and you make friends for life, you learn new things, and you end up better off than when you started. But it can be scary to do that. There's no two ways about it.
Fantastic. So 2 more questions I'm going to ask you, and then we're going to come full circle and just wrap up with the closing question for you and for Enrique. Why did you choose mechanical engineering as the discipline of study that you chose to pursue?
Sure, and I'll add that it wasn't an easy decision. And I think, you know, you hear a lot of times people who knew exactly what they wanted to do from a young age, and they were dead set on that. And I think it's important to understand that, you know, for everybody it's different. You get into things for different reasons. And maybe you even get into something at the start that you change your mind later on, and understanding that there are all kinds of paths at different stages in life is important. For me personally, honestly, I was never someone that from a young age was always like, yes, engineering, this is what I want to do. This is exactly what I want to do. Coming through school, I always just loved math and physics. They were always my favorite subjects. They were things that interested me the most, and I truly excelled at. And by the time I was going into university, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. But when I looked at math and physics, which were my favorite subjects, and I thought about it, I realized, you know, well, if I take these 2 subjects and apply them to real life and problem solving, which is what I enjoyed, engineering seemed to be the right call. So that's how I decided I wanted to do engineering in general. It took me a little more time to decide which avenue of engineering I wanted to go down, which was difficult. And I think for me, I just wanted to remain as flexible as possible in the beginning. And I quite liked electronics, but I knew that that was quite a limiting field. It's quite broad, but it's very specialized. And I think basically for me, it came down to the fact that I felt like mechanical engineering out of all the engineering disciplines was probably the most versatile in my eyes, in that, you know, anything electrical has a mechanical component. So you do a bit of electrical. Mechanical things are also based on structures. So you get a bit of exposure to civil. The probably only discipline you don't get exposed to in mechanical is chemical per se. So I just thought it was a very versatile choice, and it gave me the room that if down the line I decided I wanted to change my avenue, I thought it left the most doors open. But as I was in first year university and got exposure to all in my foundational year, I did decide that I enjoyed mechanical the most, and it aligned most with the way I thought and viewed the world. And also at that time, when I was first at university, was probably a big breakthrough time for renewable energy. It was becoming a huge topic in the world, a rapidly developing industry, and it was something I started reading up on more and more and getting interested in. And it just kind of aligned with that. And my University of Edinburgh at the time was offering a specialty for mechanical engineers to specialize their masters in renewables. And I kind of just caught on to that and decided to switch my degree over, and it just went from there. So it was almost circumstantial to an extent. But I wouldn't have it any other way. I've enjoyed every step of it, and I'm very happy where I am.
Fantastic. All right. So the question Dave was answering when you came on was how important is it to be affiliated to a professional body once you've completed your academic studies for engineering? So I'm going to ask Enrique to have his comment on that, and then Moishe, I would ask you, and then we have one last question after that, and then we're going to go straight to question and answers by the students. So Enrique?
Yes, so when you are finished your university studies, that is not the end of your learning process, your growing process. You are now starting. You learn most of your engineering in the field on a day-to-day basis, and I think the professional bodies are essential if you want to continue growing, continue learning, and connecting with your other peers. That's how you learn and get different experiences from different members in the industry. It allows you to attend like seminars, functions, and work on your personal skills as well, presentation skills. All these things are essential for your personal development and your goal if you want to become a registered engineer and keep growing in your profession. So I think it's a great organization, and I think everyone who is in engineering should definitely try to be part of a board and a community. Basically, it's like an engineering community. Yeah.
Okay, and Moishe?
Yeah, so completely agreed. I think, as Enrique said, the learning doesn't stop. And I think to an extent, we may not see it the same way, but it's similar to like doctors when they qualify. Not only is it an accreditation board that signs off on the fact that you're a certain level of quality and opens doors to other jobs and stuff because having that accreditation is very meaningful. But also, as I was saying with doctors and whatnot, the processes they learned at university change over time. New techniques come out, new ways of doing surgery, etc. And so it's a way for that profession to ensure, their rules and how many, courses you have to do every year to learn these updated techniques and information. So it's super important in that kind of industry. And I think in engineering, it's the same to an extent. We learn one thing in university, but methods and techniques, materials, technologies, they're always changing. And being affiliated with something like the Barbados Association of Professional Engineers or the other associations out there, like the Institute of Mechanical Engineers, and I think each of the disciplines have one. So chemical engineering, there's the Institute of Electrical Engineers as well. They open the doors to different levels of courses and training and discussions just like this one, where it helps to keep you up to date with your profession. What are the latest standards and practices? What are the new techniques and things happening? So it's a continuous learning process, and it's very important in industry to always be on top of that, to be the best at what you do and to know all of the pertinent things to facilitate you in doing your job and contributing to your work and to your country. So I think it's a very important thing. And I also think the other thing that's important to consider is, the Engineers Registration Board and BAPE is a local entity in Barbados. But for those thinking of, potentially working abroad as well, with institutes, well, for me, with mechanical engineering, it's the IMechE in the UK. There's also another accreditation, which is called Chartership. And that is an internationally recognized certification that if you achieve that, that opens lots of doors working anywhere in the UK or Europe. It's basically a stamp saying you are of an acceptable quality, and it opens doors for you around the world, everywhere. And I think it's important that at an early stage while you're at university, you look at what it takes to get these accreditations, what you have to do and what you have to have as prerequisites to apply. Because even though you may not be in a position to apply for these things until after 3 to 4 years of work, because you have to acquire all the necessary prerequisites, you have to know that when you start working, there's a certain way you need to be tracking your work and recording the things you do. And certainly for things like IMechE, there are certain competencies in particular you have to be achieving. And it's important that you know what they are. So as you move through your professional career, you're ensuring that the projects you're exposed to and the opportunities you're exposed to allow you to tick those boxes, because you don't want to get 3 years down the line and be like, oh yeah, I want to do chartership, and then realize, well, I should have been doing all these things for the last 3 years to be able to apply, and I just didn't even know. So I think it's really important that as early as possible, you look at what the requirements are and try to understand them, so that if you do want to go down that path, you start to put things in place early, that you're keeping the right records and doing the right things, that if and when you do want to apply, you have everything you need to do so, and you're not scrambling and then delayed.
Thanks very much. Now, the last question is going to cause some of you to think a little bit. The seminar or the webinar that we're doing this afternoon, the title of it is What is Engineering? So for each of you, Dave, Enrique, and then Moisha in turn, I want you to tell me what is engineering for you, and what does that mean to you, the whole subject matter of engineering. What is it for you? And then we're going to blast off into question and answers. So Dave?
Okay, so I will not go with the internet definition of what engineering is. I will go based on the context of Barbados, as well as what I know colleagues of mine in the industry all over the world do. And it really is, at a basic level, application of scientific knowledge to resolve problems or create solutions. That is it in a very basic sense, right? And there are several disciplines. There is electrical engineering, of which I am one. There is mechanical engineering. There is civil and structural engineering. there's chemical and process engineering, there is nuclear engineering, and in each of these, there is a subcategory. I mean, it is almost infinite, right? Within electrical and computing, there is networking, and there is protection engineering, there's control systems engineering, and similarly within mechanical, I mean, you can break it down into infinite possibilities. And so one of the things that I think is very important is for persons to recognize that the possibilities are endless. And I know colleagues who work in several companies in Barbados, from the two that I've worked in, Arawak Cement and Barbados Light and Power. There's West Indies Rum, there's Barbados Water Authority, there's Mount Gay, there's there are the consulting companies, there's Flow, there's construction companies, there's building maintenance engineering. Well, let me just touch briefly on what I experienced and my type of engineering that I was involved in. So for the most of my career, I was involved in plant maintenance engineering. So like I mentioned, I started off working at Arawak Cement as an electrical engineer. And when you pass near a plant, you see this structure, but you don't realize what is going on behind the scenes. But within these plants, you have lots of sophisticated controls. Everything is computer controlled within these plants. The operators in these plants control processes that in front of them, they have lots of data. They make lots of analyses, but a lot of it is very much automated. So you, as an electrical engineer in a plant like Arawak Cement or the Barbados Light and Power Generation plant, the type of experience that I had was in maintaining those systems. And maintaining those systems, you have to do work on them. They don't repair themselves. So sometimes a plant is built and the plant has deficiencies in certain areas, and there are areas for improvement. For instance, when you have outages, power outages sometimes, there are things that we have to work on, engineering solutions to avoid those things from happening again. And these things happen behind the scenes and you don't realize it, but every day on, that's what we're doing in the plant environment and in the transmission and distribution environment. What we're doing is looking for solutions to minimize outages and also to make the processes more efficient, because what you're working for is a business that is there to make money as well. And so it's not just a case where you go about buying the most expensive of everything because that's the best. What you do is you have to look for cost-effective, practical solutions. And so that is what we do. Most engineers in companies manage people. So in the areas I work, I had a team reporting to me for most of the time, where you would have a supervisor or foreman reporting to you, and then you would have a team of technicians. That was my experience. So you plan work, not necessarily day-to-day work, but you plan work in a manner that allows the business to operate more efficiently and the equipment to operate more reliably, right? Let me see, did I miss anything? So I also worked on projects. So projects like the one I'm working on right now, which is I'm managing the construction of a new power plant. And when you are doing that type of engineering, it really is more on a macro level, because you really cannot get into the nitty-gritty of the details of everything when you're managing a project like that. But project management skills involve managing people, managing budgets. You want to make sure that the project does not go over the budget which was allocated. You want to make sure that the project comes in on time, and you do what you can to make sure that the contracts are managed properly, right? So And this starts from the tendering process, which means you ensure that all the documents that define the specifications for the equipment that has to be ordered, all of that is spot on. And of course, in executing that, all of that is being met. So there is quite a lot of work outside of the core engineering, which involves the highly technical stuff, but there's also a lot of managerial stuff involved in the engineering work that I would have been involved in. Like I said, I know engineers, aside from the ones who work in the companies in Barbados, who worked in companies, who work at companies like Texaco overseas, Amazon, Intel, Samsung, Schlumberger, IBM, and so on, and persons who would have gone into, for instance, even professors in universities. So the scope is very large for engineering, but that was my experience in a nutshell.
Thanks, Dave. So, Enrique, what is engineering for Enrique Oxley?
Well, for me, I think on a very basic level, engineering is just finding solutions to current problems that exist in the world. And that could be a wide range of, depending on whatever sector you're in. I mean, the richest hot guy in the world right now is Elon Musk, and he's an engineer. He basically solved traffic issues and electric cars, Tesla. So there's so many different avenues we can go into. I would also like to stress that, yes, it's a very technical subject. You always hear about you need your maths and your sciences, but there is also a softer social skills side where you're working in large teams, a wide variety of personalities. And that is the sort of also exciting part of it to me, getting to work with different people from different backgrounds and different team environments. I think it has a good blend of office work where you're doing your design and you're also in the field on different projects, or from doing environmental work, I might be on the ocean and the sea doing studies there. So it's a wide variety. It's basically problem solving and in a team environment, and it's a great challenge, and I enjoy it quite a lot.
Thanks for that. And Moisha, what's engineering for you, sir?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think it's a little bit of everything. So I completely agree and relate to what both Dave and Enrique said, and I think the fact is that engineering is such a broad thing. It really at its core, to an extent, and to be a little more abstract, is a lifestyle. I mean, you get into engineering, it's problem solving at its core, and it's how you apply that problem solving to any situation. You could be an electrical engineer, a chemical engineer, whatever. You are there to solve problems and to use all of the technical knowledge you have to apply that to getting practical solutions, whether that be with the technology itself, the thing you're building or designing, or as Dave, I think, quite importantly mentioned, and Enrique touched on too, it's also people. You don't work in isolation. You don't work in a closed off box, although it may feel that way these days with COVID. But, it takes a team to make something happen. And even when you are doing a part of what is required for that team, you're a link in the chain, and you're supported by the other people around you, and you support them. And projects like what Dave mentioned, the Clean Energy Bridge, where I'm also currently based, it's a huge team effort. It's a massive project. There are tons of people doing all kinds of different tasks, but we all have the same goal at the end of the day, to get the plant functioning and contributing to Barbados as a whole. Which brings me to my last relatively abstract point, where I'd say, to me, I think engineering is a platform. It's something we get into, and it enables us, it gives us a way or a channel to give back to society, to contribute and to do the things, to do the thing we love and learn to do, but on a scale that contributes back to the country and the world as a whole. Because at the end of the day, a lot of the things we're doing as engineers are parts of projects that lead to solutions, that whether that be infrastructure, whether that be power plants, whether that be renewable power plants, whether, bridges, boats, cars, trains, these are all things that contribute to society as a whole. So on a macro level, I see it as a platform that enables us to be involved in that.
Fantastic. So just to break up the monotony, I know we were very serious there for almost about 45 minutes. So I'm going to have two corny jokes before we get going with the questions, just to break it up. So the definition of an engineer, someone has written, is a definition of an engineer is somebody who makes precise guesswork based on unreliable data provided by people with questionable knowledge. never wrong, and likes tables. So that's a bit of fun there. And then this one is, what's the main difference between a mechanical and a civil engineer? So Enrique and Dave, sorry, Enrique and Moisha, what is the difference between a mechanical and a civil engineer? Anyone want to hazard a guess at that?
No idea.
I'll play it safe and decline to answer.
Yeah.
Mechanical engineers build weapons and civil engineers build targets. So there you go. All right, so this is the exciting part. This is what we are really about this afternoon, or this evening rather, is to answer some questions for you, young people who are about to make career choices and want some information from us professionals here this afternoon. So you can either show me a raised hand, or you can field the question in the chat. And like I said, I really want to encourage all of you, please go away from this session with some information. You would have gotten a lot of information just now with all the questions that I would have asked and some of the information that the gentleman would have shared. But I'm sure there are other questions you have. So the first person up I see is Ms. Wilshire. If you can unmute and answer your question, please.
Thank you. I came in late because this is my first time using Zoom, and I was wondering what you were talking about 30 minutes in the lesson.
Well, we are discussing what is engineering. We're trying to give an overview of persons' experiences having applied for an engineering degree, having lived overseas, pursuing that engineering degree at a university overseas, and then giving some insights into having joined a professional body, the importance of having, or the importance of being a member of a professional body. So if you have, do you have a specific question? Perhaps you are doing subjects pertaining to engineering and you're about to make that decision. You have a specific question, Ms. Wiltshire? Hey, Ms. Wiltshire, if we lost you. If you're talking, you may have to unmute so we can hear you. Okay. All right. So you can come back to us. I see Mr. Daniel Cummins has a question. So Daniel, can you unmute and answer your question, please?
Good evening to you all. I'm Daniel Cummings. I'm currently studying mechanical maintenance engineering at the Samuel Jackson Prescott Institute of Technology. My question was to either one of you, what would be your hardest moment studying engineering at university?
Okay, guys, we all have those subjects which we found challenging at university. For me, I did construction management, so it's not a hard engineering course. But for me, ironically enough, it was the accounting course I had to do because I never did an ounce of accounts till I got to university, and that was very abstract to me. Dave, Enrique, Moisha, take a stab at it.
All right, so this question is just as hard as that hardest subject. But what I would say is that for me personally, I think it's very important to like what you're doing. And I may have, at a point in time when I was a lot younger, put up a mental block against certain things that I didn't feel were important. And of course, now that I've gotten more mature, I realized that that is not the best approach, but there were certain subjects, certain courses that I may not have felt were very relevant to what I wanted to do. And so for me, those were the things that I found most difficult. If I didn't enjoy it, then I probably didn't do my best in it. I think there was a course, there might have been a course that was based on a very old, obsolete computing language back then. And I felt that it was, at the time, in my young, I guess, immature way, felt it was a complete waste of time, and therefore I didn't do my best in it, right? So I think that that is important, and I gave that example just to say that attitude is so important, and the way you perceive things really has a big effect on the outcome that that you have. So if you look at things positively and so on, you can get through it, and it becomes a lot easier, right? And so this is a piece of advice I would give to you. There will not always be things that you come across that you enjoy. I mean, there are some courses, whether it be the way that the lecturer puts it across or whatever, but there's a lot of information out there, and I'm pretty sure that once you approach it positively, you can make something out of it.
Enrique, what was your hardest subject you had to fight it with, sir?
Well, first, let me say, engineering, there will be a lot of hard moments. That's why it's good to have some good friends and good colleagues to work with. Probably we had a law course called CCP, Construction Contract Procedures. Not our sort of strong suit as engineers. It was like a 4-hour lecture on Wednesday mornings. Everyone was struggling. But I enjoyed my program and all. Some challenging moments were probably seeing people doing history and sociology, having Fridays off, and you have 8 to 6 labs on a Friday or something like that. But that's all part of it, and you just keep grinding, and you'll get through.
Moisha?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I have to say pretty much aligns with the others. I think everyone has that one hardest subject, and exactly what that subject is entirely personal, and dependent on what you find more challenging. But I think the important thing is how you deal with that, and just knowing that, you just have to commit to it and persevere and do your best. And I think Enrique makes a good point. Another hard part to that is you just have to accept when you're doing engineering, it's a difficult course, it's very technical, and it's very demanding, and it takes a lot of time and dedication to get right. And I'll say the same. I mean, I boarded with a friend from Barbados when I was at university, and he was doing economics. And like in year 3, when my courses were as hard as they'd ever been, he had Mondays and Fridays off. He had 4-day weekends, and his lectures were done at 3. I was in lectures 5 days a week from 7 a.m. to maybe 5 or 6 p.m. And if I wasn't in lectures, I was trying to catch up on all the work I had to do to keep up with everything. And you just have to commit to yourself and find a way to be okay with that. And it's super important to also find ways to still fit in, some time for some fun and extracurriculars, because if you just throw yourself entirely into work and never take a break, you just burn out, and things like depression can creep in, and it's real. So I think everyone just has to find your own way to find that balance and make sure you're getting the work you need to do done, but also finding some time for yourself. And I think don't look at anybody else like the guys doing economics and have the free time. Their time will come. They're doing what they want, and you're doing the thing that's important to you. It all pays off in the end, but it takes dedication. There's no two ways about it.
Fantastic, guys. Just if you guys can just let me know generally in the chat what institutions of learning you are hailing from this evening. That would be useful for us, so we can get an appreciation of how well we're getting our message out in terms of allowing students to know of these events. So if you could just in the chat just indicate which institution of learning you're from. And the floor is open to other questions. Please raise your hand or put your question.
I saw a question there about BCC, Vincent, from Liam Lane. I don't know if I want to respond to that one.
Yep, go for it.
So he was asking, I'm currently at Barbados Community College studying building and civil engineering. Can I have a successful career in electrical or building and civil engineering with just an associate degree? So I actually did that course. I would strongly recommend it to anyone who wants to do engineering. It's a good foundation and prepared me well in my career and my studies. You may not be able to do engineering per se right away, but there are actually other, some of my current employees have an associate degree from BCC and are doing quite well. there are other there are different levels in the engineering office you can do, and then you can always grow and do further training after you're in the company. But an associate degree definitely opens the windows. It gets you in the job field, and that's the important thing. So you have to know for yourself, what you can invest in, and go from there. I would definitely recommend it as well.
Okay, Dave or Moisha, anything you want to add to that?
Nothing from me.
Moisha?
No, I'd say Enrique covered it well. And yeah, I think it's an important point to note to add to what he was saying, that, there are all different avenues to get into engineering. And whilst that course at its foundation level may not take you all the way, there are different levels within an engineering office. You can do that course, you can start to work with engineers and determine if it's the avenue you really want to go down. And then you can look for further learning opportunities that will take you that extra step. And I think that's also can be a very good avenue, because getting that work experience at an early level can help guide you with what specialty you want to go down, which actually I think a lot of people who go straight into university, myself included, kind of miss that opportunity to an extent. And the only way we get it is, potentially doing some summer jobs, which is it's hard to get a full exposure through that kind of work. So I think, they're all different avenues to the same endpoint. And I think the one that works for you personally, you kind of figure out along the way. But getting that to get an idea of where you want to go next is super valuable.
Okay, so we've got two questions, one in the chat, and I see Daniel has his hand up. So Daniel, we'll take your question first, and then I'll read a question in the chat.
Okay, once again, I wanted to know from the engineers, how do they keep up to date with developments in their field of study?
Dave, you want to start with that?
Yeah, well, I do a lot of reading, a lot of reading. And I think that, first of all, I'm fortunate to be in a company that believes in developing its human resources. And I've had the opportunity to attend a number of conferences and to go on a lot of overseas training and local training. And I think that's very important, because firstly, it exposes you to your peers in the industry. And I find that being able to network that way and to get information from others, that is very, very good. I mean, when you go to, for instance, you work in one area, whether it be a power plant or whatever, and you get to go and see other power plants, you get exposure, obviously, that you can't easily get by even reading, So I find that type of exposure is very important. But of course, following the developments, there are several publications that come to us within the company as well. And I find that information is very helpful.
Okay, Moisha, how do you keep current in your engineering subject?
Yeah, sure. So similar to Dave, I do try to do reading, and I think part of that is the importance of being interested in what you're doing too. And as I said, renewable energy being the kind of thing that interests me the most and the aspect I'm focused on, I'm subscribed to a couple of different journals and newsletters that send me emails about the latest developments. I think, as I said before too, the professional boards are good at that too. Things like BAPE, with the different seminars that are held, sometimes open opportunities to learning new things and new technologies. I'm also registered with the Institute of Mechanical Engineers out of the UK. They have a news feed and they circulate letters through emails as well that give you a news feed that have different, hot topics within mechanical engineering and different fields. So it just, multiple sources. I don't read every day or read specific subjects, but maybe every now and then I'll browse and see, look at the news feed. And if something catches my eye, I'll start to read that article. So I think it's just something you have to work into your general routine of checking and trying to see, what's out there.
Okay, so what we're gonna do, guys, because we now getting the questions rolling in. So I'll take the questions and I'll direct them to various persons. so that we can try to get through as much as we can in the shortest period of time, as opposed to having all three of you answer, if that's okay. Also, I just want to mention another way of keeping current in your field of study. It was mentioned earlier that you become member of professional bodies. And one of the requirements of being a member of professional bodies is to do something called CPD, which is Continuous Professional Development. We here at the Barbados Association of Professional Engineers, we try to give our members the opportunity to earn what is called CPD points every month by having a topic of discussion or a webinar every month, where persons can log in and basically update their skill set in a specific area, or it may be a general area. Within your professional body as well, there may be certain courses you can do every year, which helps to keep you current. And as everyone said, once you are affiliated to an engineering body or various engineering chats, chances are you will get information constantly throughout the year pertaining to your subject matter. So, but like a doctor and like a lawyer, it is very important to keep current with what is going on. Remembering, of course, that you may not always be working in Barbados. If you go outside of Barbados, you want to be current to know what is happening. And that also helps to present opportunities for you for employment as well. Okay, we're going to take the next question in the chat, and then we had two persons with their hands up. Please just be patient, I'll get to you. So the question here is, would the panel consider civil, electrical, and mechanical engineering to be saturated fields, especially in this current climate in Barbados? If so, what would they recommend to help get a job on the field, or would it be better to study another aspect of engineering? So Dave, I'm going to put that one to you because you are a bit more senior, and obviously you are probably in the process of hiring young people for jobs. What would you say in that regard?
Well, I tend not to take that view about a field being saturated. Let me just quote someone who put it in a way that I think I could put it a better way than I could put it. And that person said there's always room for the best at the top. And so what it means is that these fields are all very competitive, but if you are willing to work hard and to prove yourself, then there will be opportunities for you. I think that firstly, if you have a good attitude, you're easy to work with, you're willing to learn and willing to apply that knowledge and work hard, there will be opportunities for you. I mean, there's not to say that everything comes to you easily, but because we all know that, for instance, in times of economic hardship, sometimes opportunities take a little longer, but they will still come. I recall when I was in sixth form and I was exploring, even though I felt I wanted to do electrical engineering, I thought I would speak to some persons who were in the engineering field to get an idea of the opportunities available. So someone put me through to an experienced civil engineer, and this was about 1993. And the person told me there's no more room for civil engineers in Barbados. The field is completely saturated. But I found, even though I didn't do civil engineering, I did electrical. After I left university, there were several civil engineers who I know, all of them got jobs. And I know others who came from other islands and countries to work in Barbados as civil engineers. So, I mean, things change every day. So I wouldn't be daunted by that. People say that about the legal profession as well. And every year you see quite a few lawyers. So just research and know what you're getting into, but I wouldn't be too worried about the fact that a field is saturated or appears to be.
Okay. What I would also want to encourage our students to recognize is that don't only think about working in Barbados. You need to start thinking of the Caribbean as your oyster, as it were.
Good point. Very good.
Barbados is 166 square miles. And yes, the market can accommodate a certain amount of persons every year, but there are persons then who struggle to find employment within the Barbadian market. So look at the Caribbean, look at other islands. They may require your talent, and start thinking that you may have to work outside of Barbados for a period of time, because depending on the avenue of engineering you pursue, either there may not be employment opportunities at that point in time in the field of study that you have chosen. And if it is something that is abstract, I mean, if you go and do aeronautical engineering, for example, you certainly will have to work outside of Barbados because that opportunity may not exist at this point in time. So I think, as was said earlier, you need to, in your research and in your consideration for what degree you're going to pursue, take all of that into consideration. All right, I saw Ms. Wilshire had her hand up. I've seen the hand gone down. Ms. Wilshire, do you want to ask a question? Or was the question answered by what was said?
I was going to ask if was a engineering to do with art.
Engineering to do with art. Every aspect of engineering, there is some draftsmanship involved. There is also architectural engineering. Like I said, there's a lot of diversity in engineering. So if you are a creative person, and I'm sure everybody in here has some level of creativity, there is creativity in whatever field of engineering you're going to. So art, as you would be aware, can be expressed in many forms. Art is not only the person that designs a computer program may find something artistic about that, or the program itself may be designed to do something artistic. A person that designs structures, again, they can find something artistic in what they design. Bridges and these iconic structures all have an aspect of art to it. So if you have an inkling of interest in, if you're an artistic person, but you still want to pursue engineering, then you may look for that niche in there where you can probably facilitate both aspects of your interest. Miss Junelle Thorne, sorry.
My question is that, what advice do you have for a person at 15 years old?
No, Janelle, when you say advice for a person at 15 years old, you have to give me a bit more to work with than that. 15-year-old being you're looking to go into sixth form, you're looking to go to do an engineering program. What do you a bit more info?
Like what subjects I should choose and stuff like that moving forward.
Okay. Enrique, can you tackle that one for me?
Yeah, so I think it depends on what your interests are. And I sort of worked backwards there. I found the subjects that I was good at, and then I sort of extrapolated engineering. Similar to Moisha, I was good at maths and physics and TD, technical subjects like that. So probably the subjects you're doing better at are the ones that you enjoy more. So I would gravitate to those naturally. And that could sort of guide you.
Okay, thanks for that.
For engineering, obviously you need your technical subjects. So you need your mathematics and your sciences if you're considering engineering.
Yeah, if you're going to be looking to do any engineering, or if you're looking even to get into the community college, there are certain prerequisite subjects that you will need to do. Mathematics is usually high on that list. Things like technical drawing, that also helps. Physics is another one of those subjects. Depending on the type of engineering you're looking to pursue, chemistry may also be required. So look ahead. You said you are 15, so you're probably in fifth form, looking to go into sixth form, or probably looking to go on to BCC. So look ahead not only to your next step, but to the step after that.
I mean, third form.
Third form, okay. Well, regardless, even if you're in third form, look ahead into where you think you may want to go next, and have a discussion with your guidance counselor to assist you, because I know different schools, in terms of choosing programs with subjects, you may find that some subjects may be in different areas. They may not be together the way you would like to group them. So you may need to speak to your guidance counselor just to give you a bit of help in that regard as well. All right, so thanks, Mr. Thorne, for your question. I'll take a question now from the chat. And this one is coming at you, Moisha. So this question says, does it matter what college or university you choose to become a successful engineer?
So I think my definitive answer would be absolutely not. I think you can be successful no matter what. And I think the university you go to and what you make of it is very much dependent on what you put into it and what you're trying to get out of it. And I think it's important to consider that, you know, the different universities have different styles of courses. Some universities are more academic, some err more on the practical side and have more hands-on teaching. So I think it's important to, you know, when you're thinking of universities, I think you have to start looking at what the options are and trying to decide for yourself what style of course appeals to you more. You know, do you want more of that hands-on experience, or are you leaning more towards an academic side or a more like programming and desktop work side versus hands-on? I think it's very personal, depends on what you want. And I'd say that there are all kinds of universities out there for engineering that offer a broad range of courses that are taught in different ways. And I think it's just understanding what's out there and choosing which of those options work best for you. I would also say that there's so many different avenues to get to where you want to go, you know. And I think coming back to the question there from Janelle, you know, what subjects you want to take, I think it's never too young to start looking at universities and what their prerequisites are, because the worst case scenario for you is to get to that point of applying and then realizing you don't have what's needed. So I think no matter what stage you're at, start looking at universities, the types of courses they offer and what the requirements are, and start thinking about what works for you. Now, when 3 years down the line or so, when you actually go to apply, you may decide that you want to do something completely different. But it's good to start getting that idea now so you can start preparing yourself for the avenue that today you believe you want to pursue, even if you change that course down the line.
Okay, thanks very much for that. All right, so we've got several questions up in the chat. I will not necessarily.
Can I just interrupt you 1 second? And this is a comment from Paula Adwo.
Yes,
I think it's very important to add that to what Moisha was saying. And I did mention earlier that it's important to choose a university program that can lead to being a registered engineer, because there are some programs which may look attractive, and there have been many examples of persons who only learned after they graduated and after they worked in the field for a number of years and applied to register as an engineer, that the program they studied and invested all their time and energy and money into, that you were not able to register to practice engineering in that with that degree. So it is very important to research that. If you're not sure, I think perhaps maybe the accreditation council or one of those bodies may assist you with that.
Yeah, I think what Dave said, and that's following on again from Moisha, is very important. Accreditation of your degree program is something that when you are doing your background research, you must check into. So we've mentioned professional bodies here, we've mentioned registration. Now, if you're going to become a professional in any field, chances are you'll have to register within the country that you're going to practice that field of study in. So whether it is medicine, law, or engineering, there is a registration process. And it's always useful to understand, if you are planning to become a professional, what the registration process in the particular country may require of you. And one of the big things, certainly to become a registered engineer, is to make sure you've done an accredited degree. So when you're looking at your degree programs, you need to make sure it is accredited in the field of study that you're looking to do. So if you're doing civil engineering, you want to see if an international body that represents such civil engineering is accredits that as an accredited institution. So if you're going to do, even if you're doing something like quantity surveying, you want to look at the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors and see what universities they have on their accreditation list, just to be sure that when you invest all your time, your money, and your energy into that degree, that you do not learn afterwards, that you may have to do a couple makeup courses then to be able to register. So that is important. So make sure that you do check that out fully. Okay, thanks for that. So some other questions we've got coming through, and like I said, I'm not going to take them in any particular order, given that we are going to be coming up on time. I'll just ask our presenters a little bit of grace since we have a lot of questions, and we will look to wrap up by 8 if you guys can allow us that grace this evening. Okay, so Nadira Wiltshire has she's had some challenges with her computer, so she's just making an apology there. Miss McIntosh from Queen's College is asking, what advice would you give to someone who wants to do engineering but has troubles in subjects like physics and mathematics? If they really dislike those subjects, what should be their next move? So I'm going to give a little bit of background here. I actually struggled with mathematics and physics as well. And I did my O-level mathematics right up to when I was in sixth form before I got back on an acceptable grade. I think it has a lot to do. I know some of those subjects may be a little abstract and maybe challenging, but if you're looking to go into engineering, you certainly need to have an appreciation of certain subject matter. So there are some subjects you may have to work harder at than others if you are hoping to qualify for our engineering program. As I said, there may be some subjects that you have to, that you need to be able to matriculate, what they call prerequisites. So you may need to have, depending on which aspect of engineering you go into, there are certain subjects there that you will require to have. So you may have to work a little harder at those subjects. You may have to do a makeup course when you're finished your secondary education just to make sure you have that subject matter to go on to the next stage. If you are keen on engineering, if that's your dream, just continue to work at it. Sometimes for subject matter, it is how it's delivered to you may be a challenge, and you may just need to find somebody else to do it, deliver it a little differently, and then you may understand better. So that would be my advice to you, Ms. McIntosh. All right, let's look for another question here. Okay, I only decided, this one is from Jalen Seeley. I only decided to pursue engineering late, so I have the prerequisites like physics, but I did carpentry, CVQ. Will that hinder me from getting into the course at UWI, BCC, or SJPI? Enrique, you want to take a stab at that one?
Yes, just read this question again. So he did some prerequisites, carpentry. I think there's some flexibility there at BCC and SGPP. I'm not too certain. What I would do is contact the department's heads there. I mean, you could go and speak to, at my time it was Mr. Waterman, and they will walk you through what is required. And sometimes they make exceptions if you have different skills. So send in a query. It doesn't ever hurt, and see what comes back.
Yeah, and if you're at secondary school, I would encourage you, go have a word with your guidance counselor, because that's what those individuals are there to help you to make those decisions, to help you to know, okay, if this is something you definitely want to pursue, you may need to do some additional courses here to be able to qualify to enter the SJPI or the BCC as your stepping stone to where you want to get to. So,
and yeah, one more thing there, Vincent. So I actually didn't do physics for A-level. I did it, I think, only in third form, which is one of the reasons I left Harrison College and went to BCC, because that program would prepare me for the university. So you're still quite early. You can adjust your route. I wouldn't, panic or anything at this time. I didn't do physics, and I'm doing engineering now. So.
Fantastic, good stuff. Okay, we have a question from Janeri Blackman. Can you do more than one type of engineering? Because I'm interested in both mechanical and electrical engineering. I was wondering if I can only do one, or can I do both? Moisha, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, of course. And I think the short answer is yes, you can definitely do multiple types of engineering. I would say that, in fact, almost all university degrees in engineering, whether it be the first semester or the entirety of the first year, actually expose you to courses in all disciplines. And there's usually the flexibility that within that first semester or first year that you can actually change if you want to into different. So you get some exposure to them, and you have choices of switching early on in your degree. Certainly that was my experience. And also more specifically to your question, 100%. In fact, mechanical and electrical engineering, although it might be not entirely intuitive, are very interrelated. If you think about it, pretty much any mechanical device has an electrical component to it. And in fact, it is now a standard in UK engineering degrees that to be an accredited mechanical engineering degree, you have to take a certain level of electrical engineering courses, and vice versa. Electrical engineers doing an accredited degree must take a minimum of a certain amount of accredited mechanical engineering courses. And in fact, at my university, University of Edinburgh, there is a specific degree that is a joint degree between mechanical and electrical engineering called mechanical and electrical engineering. And that while I was there, I've seen that become more and more of a standard in the UK and the EU, that there's a dedicated degree that is a joint mechanical and electrical engineering degree, and it's very popular. So definitely, yes, that is an option.
Thanks for that, Moisha. Okay, Dave, this next one I'm going to throw at you. Paul Branch asks, I don't really hear much mention about electronic and computer engineering careers in Barbados, which is the associate degree I study at BCC. What advice do you have about becoming an engineer in that field?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Well, there is still opportunity. There is still opportunity. And I think that it's important to talk to others who would have done that field of study so they would give you an idea of the opportunities available. What happens is that in a degree program like electrical, it covers a broader range of I guess topics, whereas electronics and controls and computing would be more focused on an area. But there's still opportunity because a lot of the companies have automation, and the scope for application of that is still there. I will say though, and I recall when I was about to go into university, because back when I was applying for university, I actually wanted to study electronic engineering. And someone told me that, and this was someone in the Ministry of Education I spoke to, that person told me that the scope for electronic engineering in Barbados was not that great. And I got very scared, and I decided, because at the time I was considering, I was accepted at University of Birmingham to do electronic engineering, and I decided I wasn't going to do that. But I think that it is important to talk to persons who would have done it to see what scope and opportunities are available, right? Don't just write it off like that without doing your research. At this point, talk to as many people as possible to get an idea of the opportunities there, right?
Fantastic. And just to follow on to what Dave is saying, there's a question in the chat from Joshua Ward. He said, I'm currently studying electronic and computer engineering at BCC. Would there be any engineers in the field within the association that I can get into contact with? So I would invite you, Joshua, to contact our secretariat. The information was posted earlier in the chat. They will put it up again for you. And you're going to speak to a lady by the name of Stacy, and she'll be able to direct you to some of our colleagues. You may even get it directed to Dave if he has time. And they can probably, like Dave said, you want to talk to as much persons in the field of study that you're considering at this point in your time, just to get a realistic idea of what that profession involves, what that profession pays, because I'm surprised no one has asked any question about what engineering pays. I assume everyone is just assume that we make millions and millions of dollars. But you need to know what you're going to be paid. And you need to understand that you don't start off at the top, that you start off from the bottom and you work your way to the top as well. So those are questions you need to find out when you're going to make a career choice and when you're going to find out how employable you would be if you do certain subjects. So by all means, contact our secretariat, and we are happy to facilitate questions. The secretary reach out to different individuals in the association, and hopefully we'll be able to either through email or otherwise make contact with you and be able to answer some questions for you. Okay, Enrique, I've got a question here for you.
Sure.
I just got to scroll back to find it. Just give me a second, please. Has quite a few questions coming in. The person basically was asking Enrique how important it was to pursue a master's degree in engineering. Do you want to expand upon that, seeing that you did pursue your master's in engineering?
Yeah, so for me, I didn't go in intentionally to do the master's. I was on the master's program, and in the UK, if you're doing quite well, you can get promoted up, you sort of get recommended up. So I took that opportunity. I don't think it's necessary. I think the degree is there to get you into the door, open doors to say that you have dedicated so much of your time in this field of study. And you're at a certain level where we can think of employing you. I think the main thing is to, after you've gotten your degree, is that's when the work now starts, and you can rise and be competitive with your other co-workers that way. I think going the route of master's and PhD as well is you need to consider if you want to be practical on the job site, or you want to go into a more teaching sort of role, lecturing and stay within the academic role as well. There are two different avenues there that you can consider.
Okay, and I just want to follow on a little bit from Enrique. Because Barbados is a small island and opportunities can be challenging to get, I would recommend, if you are doing a first degree, that you seriously consider getting some work experience before you go on to do a second degree, unless, as Enrique says, an opportunity such as he had presents itself.
I think that's even more important, Vincent. I think the work experience is critical, and they have some co-op programs.
Yeah, the reason I say that also is because persons treat a master's degree as a professional degree. So you may start off doing engineering as your first degree, and you may end up like Dave in a project management role, and you may decide, you know what, if I'm going to do a master's, I want to do an MBA, or I might want to do a project management master's. Or if you are very technically involved, then you might want to do a master's in your specific field of study. I think the work experience after your first degree helps you to inform, or helps you to make a more informed decision towards that professional degree. Also, you will find that if you come back to Barbados with a master's degree and no work experience, you may find it difficult to find some employment, because the first thing most people are going to think is that they can't afford to pay you. So if you're going to do a master's degree, my recommendation will be that you get some credible work experience outside of Barbados before you come back to Barbados, so that you're coming with not only with your degree, but with credible work experience, because just to come back and find a job with just a master's degree can prove to be challenging. Okay, and like I said, we're trying to be very honest with you guys this evening. We don't want to scare anyone, but we want to be very real with you so that you make informed choices when you have to make them as well. Okay, let's see what other questions we have here. Hi, I'm from Queen's College. What advice would you give to someone who wants to do engineering? But, oh, sorry, we had that one already. My apologies. Let me just scroll back down and see what else we have. Okay, I'm interested in product design engineering. And I was wondering if this type of engineering, or if this is a type of engineering, or if this is a specific type of engineering that you would, sorry, it's a little, so the person is interested in product design engineering, and basically they're trying to find out if this is the type of engineering that you could possibly find a job in the Caribbean with. It also said, does it make more sense to study engineering fields such as mechanical, electrical, civil, etc.? So again, research at this point in time is very important. You need to find out if you are interested in product design, there is something called industrial design, and that is related to engineering. Every engineering field has a design element. So whether you're in civil, electrical, mechanical, there'll always be that possibility that you can work in the design office as well to actually design, whether it's industrial components or structures or whatever it is. So every engineering discipline has an element of design. The way most professional degrees are structured is that you will do, once you've completed your degree, it's recommended that you would do a period of time working within industry or on the job site, and then a period of time working within the design office in order to be able to qualify to become a professional in the field. So if you are more on the design side, you can look at the various aspects of engineering and see how it may apply to what it is that you're interested in doing. But like I said, there are a lot of different disciplines of engineering. So be sure to do your research. And again, Chelsea Watson, you can speak to your guidance counselor, and there's a lot of information available on the internet, positive information that will help you to make some choices in that regard. Okay, let's just see. I have a question here from Matthias Gittins, and I'm going to direct this question at Dave. Matthias asks, what, in your opinion, is the best course of action for students at the college level after leaving? Continue to study or look for work? Dave?
That obviously depends on what you have in mind for yourself, right? And so it is. So when you say at the college level, you mean after completing university? Is that what you're talking about?
Matthias, can you type in the chat, or if you can unmute in this answer, is that possible for you? He said yes, sir.
Okay, so yeah, it depends on what you want. If you want to become an academic, you may want to do further studying. But I do believe, though, that very early on in one's career, some exposure is important to help you to understand the field properly. Because if you have only had exposure through the academic side of things, then you may not have had a full appreciation of what is involved in the field. I mean, I certainly did not until I started to work. And I will say this, that when I was in university, I did electrical engineering. When I saw courses on power systems engineering, they didn't seem as interesting to me. And I was like, power seems so boring. You know, at that time, everybody was into controls and computers and so on. Actually, computers were, a lot of people who graduated in my time actually went into that stream. And so I was never really thinking that power was something that I would want to go into. It sounded boring. But after getting involved in the industry, I realized that there's so much more to power than I thought when I was studying. And so I actually spent most of my career so far in power systems engineering. So that work exposure really does help you to decide what avenues you want to go down. So if you do specialize too early, then you may not necessarily have all the information you need to make a good decision. I mean, that is not to say that you can't change, but you don't want to invest a lot of time and energy into something and then realize that, you know, that is not really what I thought it was, you know. So there's the advantage of getting early work exposure.
Okay, Dave, thanks a lot. All right, so I like to respect people's time, and we are now 4 minutes away from 8. So that will be our last question this evening. If you have any questions or if there's some information perhaps that you needed that you didn't get through tonight's webinar, we invite you to contact our secretariat, and the information is up on the screen. There are various ways to contact us. You can telephone, you can go onto our website, you can send us an email. We are also on social media. So we invite you to reach out to us, reach out to the Barbados Association of Professional Engineers, and we shall certainly endeavor to get the information in terms of the questions you may have answered. Thank you so much to our panel this evening for entertaining the questions and for being open and honest, and for giving our students an insight into what is perhaps some of the most important decisions they'll be making in their young lives as it pertains to career planning and certainly planning for a profession to follow on. Thanks a lot, and we hope that you will continue to tune into our student sessions in the coming months, where we will be discussing various topics on engineering and basically sharing information with you pertaining to the engineering body as well. So thank you so much all, and I wish you a safe week and a blessed Easter. Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.